I'm Sarah Wilson and you're listening to the Roots and All Budcast. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Budcast. I'm afraid I'm still suffering from the dreaded lurgy, so to save you from my coughing and spluttering, and also due to popular demand, here's part 2 of Allotments with Louise Bell. I hope you enjoy it. Talking of bare soil being just a magnet for every weed within a 10-mile radius, what do you do with your plot over the winter if you've not got crops in it?
The bits that... Well, I've got raised beds, which again sort of come... So I'm slightly mixing up the answers now, but when we were first trying to clear our own plot, which was shoulder high in brambles and buddleia and everything else, I found it incredibly helpful to just sort of set out the areas that I was going to cultivate and then concentrate on each. And now I find it sort of psychologically very helpful to go up and think, right, I'm just going to tackle this one bed today, rather than feeling like I'm trying to hold back a jungle that's encroaching on the whole area. So I generally, if I haven't got any crops in the soil, just cover it with a really thick layer of horse muck during the winter. Okay. You could also plant green manure, which is probably a really helpful thing to do when you're first starting out, if you're still really battling with the weeds, because if you get one that sort of grows quite thick and lush, it's obviously going to suppress the weeds, as well as adding some goodness to the soil when you come to dig it in.
Have you tried to use that before?
Yes, I have.
Did you get on all right with digging it in?
Yeah, I did.
Actually,
really?
It was so thick that it was almost worse than any weeds would have been.
How are you... So I sort of slice off or do it in strips. Yeah. So I would kind of slice off the top layer of the green manure and then take that round to the end of the bed. Right. Then dig a trench and then tip the next slice of green manure into the bottom of the trench. I think you have to be quite systematic about it, rather than just sort of going over the whole area and trying to chop it up.
So you need to
hoping that it's going to disappear. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Tip it into the bottom of the trench, put the soil on top of it, and then you've created your next trench. The most pernicious weed on our site, without a question, is couch grass.
Right, okay.
And that is obviously quite a difficult one to deal with because it sends out it has this sort of mat of runner type roots. Yeah. And if you rotivate, for example, you just chop up those. It's kind of Sorcerer's Apprentice. You chop up those roots into tiny little sections, and then each section grows into more couch grass. So you really have got to dig it out manually if you're going to try to do it that way. But I have seen people grow vegetables really, really successfully by literally just piling stuff on top of the couch grass, not worrying about it at all. I think it's called lasagna gardening, where you might put down something that's going to biodegrade, but something like a layer of cardboard to help suppress the weeds and reduce their vigour. And then on top of that, just pile mounds and mounds of compost and muck. And, you could bring spent compost from your garden if you've got loads of stuff in pots or whatever. All that would be perfect. Bit of topsoil, maybe, really whatever is around. Yeah. And then just plant into that.
I'm a big proponent of that. It's much easier than trying to dig through and get every last scrap of weed out. Yeah. So couch grass obviously is horrible. The other horrible, nasty ones that you might come across on your allotment?
Well, I feel like I'm kind of responsible for bringing most of them in, because I think I bring a lot of weedy horse muck onto my allotment. So I have got a lot of bindweed, but I know that you're a really big fan of bindweed. So aren't you?
No,
I thought you loved... Who was I talking to the other day that loves bindweed? I mean, it is incredibly pretty.
But I don't, I wouldn't say that I would leave it in situ.
Yeah, but it does tend to strangle your plants. Yeah. I mean, that is quite a difficult one to get rid of, because by the time you're aware of it, it's kind of really got a hold. And typically it's also then growing up, hopefully so have some of the plants that you do actually want to grow. So then you've got that situation where it's tangled in amongst all of the plants that you do actually want. And when you try to yank it out, it has a horrible tendency to damage them, or I'm always kind of yanking it out and ripping off all the raspberries.
Actually, it's one of my favourite. It is one of my favourite weeds, because it's actually one of my favourites to weed out. It's very satisfying.
It is very. If you can get it at the bottom and get a really good yank,
get all those white beet lace roots out. It's great fun.
Yeah, it is really satisfying.
I mean, I would say probably from my experience with more ornamental gardening, probably the things you want to watch out for are brambles.
Yes.
And mare's tail, I would imagine, would be fairly horrendous to deal with on a plot, would it?
I'm sure it would. Fortunately, I've never seen it. We do have a pond area in the lower part of our site, which I believe is absolutely full of mare's tail. But we made a very, very sensible decision a few years ago when the council came to us and said that one of the local schools was interested in taking it on and having it as a sort of wildlife and recreation area. We said, how marvellous. And so would you like to come in? And so basically they came in and dealt with the mare's tail. We do have Japanese knotweed.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, but again, fortunately, some distance away from my plot.
Eek.
Yeah. Don't want to see that.
No, you don't. And ground elder is pretty horrible.
Yeah. Again, it's couch grass is the number one enemy. Yeah. And I, touch wood, we dug it out very, very thoroughly when we first got there. I will, as I already said, we were creating raised beds. So we had very clearly demarcated areas that we were cultivating, and therefore also very clearly demarcated areas for our paths. And we did actually use some glyphosate on the paths, just in that first phase of preparing the ground, and then covered that area with weed-proof membrane. And it's fine. I mean, it's full of other things now, but we're going to come on to self-sowers, aren't we?
We are indeed. In fact, why don't we now?
Okay.
I'm not sure everybody's going to understand the concept of self-sowing plants, but can you explain a little bit about them? And have you let any loose that you wish you hadn't?
No. Well...
Or have any of your neighbours?
No, because another reason that I didn't mention for choosing the plot that I did is that I am next to some of the best gardeners on the entire site, which is very handy in terms of getting freebies and also not being bothered. I'm the person most likely in our corner to be spreading unwanted weed seeds, I think, rather than any of them. So I don't know if I can define a self-sowing plant. You're probably better at that than me, but it's one that I guess has some mechanism for kind of broadcasting its seeds when it comes to the end of its own life, whether they sort of go pop or are carried away by the breeze, and have the ability to establish themselves wherever they fall. I think I said this to you already, but when you asked me that question, it made me think a lot about what's going on the allotment at the moment, and I thought, I better deal with these foxglove seed heads. And of course you go and cut down one of the dead brown spikes. I mean, I was picking seeds out of my clothes and my ears.
I was going to say ears. They're always getting your ears.
Because they're and you can hear them rattling, and you just each of those foxglove spikes is like 50,000 plants. So my plot, I mean, it does have these clearly marked beds and paths, so it has got a structure, but it's very, very woolly around the edges. I have got an awful lot of I've got foxgloves, I've got self-heal, the little creeping stuff with the purple flowers, I've got linaria, I've got, which is a toadflax, I've got nasturtiums, I've got calendula, which is the pot marigold, I've got borage, and none of these are things that so I suppose that's that's another part of the definition, isn't it? It's not that I go in each year and sprinkle these seeds for these things around in an artful way. They are just popping up year after year. And if I made a bit more of an effort this year to try to keep them slightly under control, because last year the nasturtium situation was just beyond a joke. And forget-me-nots, of course, in the spring. Got loads and loads of those as well. But it's lovely, and I think that a plot should have a mix. Even if you're not growing flowers formally, it's wonderful to have them.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful, it attracts pollinators, and obviously that's to the benefit of your vegetable and fruit crops.
And in the case of nasturtiums, it could be a sacrificial crop, presumably.
Yes, it could be a sacrificial crop. Mine I actually feel like this year I'm really seeing that in action more clearly than I've ever seen it before, because my nasturtiums are covered in black fly, and there are very, very few on my French beans.
Oh, well.
So there you are. Crossed. And of course, nasturtiums are an edible crop in themselves.
Yeah.
The flowers, the leaves are fantastic in salads, and you can pickle the seeds at the end of the season as well, and they taste like capers.
Yeah. One of the, I do have a bit of borage hell going on at the moment in one of my gardens, because that's seeded around everywhere. But one of the most invasive things I think I've planted in a veg garden is New Zealand spinach. Have you come across that?
No. Is that one of the perpetual types?
I think it must be. I don't really know much about it. My customer bought some seeds and I grew it, and it just went everywhere.
Really?
It's actually quite difficult to weed out.
How did it... So was it... It was going to seed and then...
and it was just
and then scattering
everywhere.
The seeds?
Yeah.
Huh. No.
And it just came up everywhere. And I thought... And before I knew it, I literally had a carpet of it, and I was like... what's gone on with that? But I think
chance would be a fine thing, so I can say something that's actually edible spreading itself around.
I'd be if you want something, that would be a good one. And if you had a light soil, I can imagine fennel would be a bit of a pain in the backside, because does
actually they do keep popping up. I have very, very little success with growing fennel because I'm a time is the big challenge for me at the allotment. Fennel is a crop that needs quite a lot of water. You need to be doing that well, and you need to be doing it regularly. But I do say what I tend to do, actually, because I really like it, is actually just grow it for the tops rather than for the bulbs. But you're right, it does, and the flowers, of course, gorgeous.
Yeah,
and it does spread itself around. You're right, it keeps popping up, but it's beautiful. So
it's lovely,
and it's I can imagine that might be a pest in an ornamental garden where you're trying to really control it, but. My whole attitude to the allotment, as you're probably beginning to guess, is quite laissez-faire.
Indeed. I don't think that's a bad thing. So talking of watering fennel,
yes.
How often are you going to have to water your crops in the summer?
At the moment, and obviously we're speaking at a time when we're having an unprecedentedly warm spell of weather, I'm going up there every other day and watering. Which, to be honest, is probably not enough.
Yeah, I can imagine once a day really
would be ideal, but you have to be realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
And just accept that some things are maybe not going to thrive.
Yeah, same with the gardens at the moment. You just have to be a bit...
Yeah, but it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I mean, I've had years growing where there's... The one thing I have learned is that something different goes wrong every single year. And I've had years where I've not been able to grow courgettes or squashes because we've just... And I know growing a courgette is something that a 3-year-old could do. And everyone keeps saying, oh, it's so easy. But they need sun. No, they're Mediterranean plants and they need water as well because they're big watery plants too. But without the sun, they're just not going to ripen. No. And I've had pathetic crops of those. And this year they're amazing. Yeah. So I think it's just a question really of making them and they manage your expectations. Actually, maybe that is the best piece of advice I could give anyone.
So actually that I think probably is quite pertinent for another one of my questions, which was you might go into this thinking you are going to produce enough to feed maybe your family of 4. How likely is that? You're already smiling, Riley.
Well, I mean, we're a family of 2, but I like to cook a lot. You know, I've often got other people around